Hello and welcome to the June 2025 edition of the Sol Briefing. I'm Marik von Rennenkampff. Loyal Sol Briefing viewers will remember that the director of the Pentagon's UAP analysis effort, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, or AARO, Dr. John Kozlowski, has stated on several occasions that he, as a scientist, and his team are perplexed, stumped by several, quote, true anomalies, end quote, really peculiar UAP incidents. Now, in an interview with ABC News earlier this month, Kozlowski stated that, quote, several dozen UAP cases remain unresolved despite rigorous scientific analysis. Now, that admission alone is fascinating and unprecedented in the nearly century-long history of the U.S. government's involvement with UFOs. Until now, however, we've had no information or specifics about such incidents. But in an interview with the New York Post's Stephen Greenstreet, Tim Phillips, the former deputy director of the Pentagon's UAP analysis office, provided fascinating insights into the UAP cases that have left the government perplexed. According to Phillips, some of these incidents involve, quote, fiery orbs and, quote, black triangles. Phillips' statement is fascinating, and it should immediately grab the attention of even the most amateur student of the UAP topic. During World War II, for example, military pilots in both the European and Pacific theaters observed fiery orbs, also described as balls of fire, and Foo Fighters stalking their aircraft. This was widely reported in the media at the time, including in a January 1945 front page story in the New York Times. Now, balls of fire or similar phenomena also feature prominently in several U.S. government analyses of the UFO phenomenon. One of the earliest surviving intelligence assessments of UAP, dating to 1948, lists, quote, balls of fire as one of the most commonly observed UAP morphologies. At the same time, the Project Blue Book files, which document the UFO reports formally submitted to the US government in the 1950s and 1960s, are literally littered with references to balls of fire, fiery orbs, orange spheres, and identical phenomena. And according to Phillips, such objects are still being observed today. At the same time, black triangles have been reported by reliable observers for decades. UFO archivist and researcher David Marler's book on the topic is a must-read, especially in light of Phillips' recent comments. Intriguingly, Phillips suggested that the Pentagon has photos and videos of such objects. Now, it may not seem like it, but for those of us who have been following this topic and its history very closely, the remarkable admissions and statements from current and former government officials over the last several months and their historically unprecedented nature can arguably be characterized as a form of disclosure. A June 6th Wall Street Journal story alleges that the Pentagon itself spurred much of America's UFO, quote, mythology. According to the journal's reporting, an Air Force hazing ritual in which officers were allegedly briefed on a, quote, secret alien project over the course of decades lies at the root of long-standing allegations of secret government UFO activities. The journal, apparently citing former Pentagon officials, also offers a, quote, terrestrial explanation for a well-known 1967 incident where a UFO allegedly shut down 10 active, on-alert nuclear missiles. First and foremost, the notion that, quote, thousands of military personnel, as former deputy director of the Pentagon's UFO analysis office, Tim Phillips, alleged in his recent interview, that these folks were falsely led to believe that the U.S. government operates secret alien programs is truly a stretch. To date, no evidence, none, for such widespread systemic hazing or training or what have you has emerged. Kirk McConnell recently retired after serving 37 years on the Congressional Armed Services and Intelligence Committees, where he held the highest, most compartmented security clearances. Kirk was also, importantly, one of the Senate's lead staffers on the UFO subject. Kirk told me recently that he is, quote, confident that he, quote, was never told by the former director of the Pentagon's UFO Analysis Office, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, or anyone else from the office or the Department of Defense, that the department had uncovered and documented a significant number of instances where Department of Defense officials actively and knowingly spread misinformation about UAP in order to provide cover for special access programs or to play jokes on their colleagues, end quote. To that end, we look forward to a detailed assessment with evidence and not some vague extrapolations in the Pentagon's forthcoming follow-up report on the U.S. government's historical involvement with UFOs. At the same time, the Pentagon apparently cannot keep its story straight. A year after allegedly discovering this sweeping, systemic alien hazing activity, the former director of the Pentagon's UAP Analysis Office, again, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, claimed that long-standing allegations of secret UFO retrieval and reverse engineering programs are the product of circular reporting from a, quote, small group, end quote, of alien believers. Yet now, supposedly, thousands of personnel were led to believe that such programs exist. Which one is it? Perhaps worse, the journal, again, apparently citing former government sources, states that an unannounced test of an electromagnetic pulse explains the well-known 1967 Malmstrom Air Force Base UFO incident. But the notion that such destructive methods, which disable and destroy sensitive electronics, would be tested against active, on-alert nuclear missiles is frankly absurd. It's preposterous. And to add insult to injury, the government documents cited by the journal's reporters to support this so-called explanation flatly debunk it instead. In short, the electrical system supposedly responsible for the UFO observed hovering by the front gate of the Malmstrom Air Force Base missile facility and the ensuing shutdown of the nuclear missiles was not proposed until 1971, 4 years after the UFO incident. And it was not even tested until 1973, 6 years after the incident. The system, had it existed at the time, also weighed thousands of pounds. To suggest that it was somehow secretly installed by the front gate of an active, on-alert nuclear missile control facility undetected is truly preposterous. Even more bizarrely, Tim Phillips, again, the former deputy director of the Pentagon's UAP Analysis Office, explicitly disputed the Wall Street Journal's theory for this event in a discussion with UAP skeptic Mick West. Now, while the theory that Phillips proposed for the missile shutdown, an electrical failure, is also easily disproven by the documents, the question remains, how on earth did the journal get this so wrong? Now, speaking of that Wall Street Journal article, on June 10th, a few days after the story was published, congressional reporter Matt Laszlo asked Senator Mike Rounds for his reaction to the report. Remarkably, Senator Rounds hinted that the UAP Disclosure Act, which he, along with Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, has co-sponsored for 2 years in a row now, would be reintroduced potentially fairly soon as part of the annual National Defense Authorization Act. Now, just as a reminder, the Disclosure Act is arguably the most extraordinary legislation ever introduced in Congress. In essence, it alleges that a secret government, quote, legacy program, end quote, has retrieved UFOs and, quote, biological evidence of non-human intelligence. Biological evidence of non-human intelligence. It also defines, quote, non-human intelligence and refers to that term at least 24 times. Perhaps more importantly, the Disclosure Act would establish a panel of distinguished citizens who would review government UAP records for public disclosure along a controlled disclosure campaign. Now, to put all of this into context, if Rounds and Schumer reintroduced the Disclosure Act, it would send a very, very strong signal that Congress, the Senate, Schumer, Rounds are not buying the Pentagon's denials and the Wall Street Journal's remarkably poor reporting about the existence or the potential existence of unreported UFO programs and activities. Now, I would personally encourage anyone watching this and wishing for government transparency on this decades-long mystery to sign the petition that is linked at the bottom of this video in the description. And finally, speaking of the Senate, that congressional chamber may have a new convert to the UAP topic. Speaking to ACE congressional reporter Matt Laszlo, Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona, a former astronaut and naval aviator, said that the well-known 2004 Tic Tac UFO incident, which has received the 60 Minutes and New York Times treatment among many other outlets, is, quote, pretty compelling with not a straight explanation, end quote. Kelly continued, quote, I've looked at it. I've looked at the video. I've talked to the pilot, Commander Fravor. It makes me curious.